All right, so we're diving into some pretty interesting research on Martin Fayulu. This guy, he's got a background I definitely didn't expect. We're talking someone who worked with ExxonMobil.
Yeah, not exactly the usual path, right? You don't see a lot of oil executives turned political leaders, especially not challenging election results and taking on corruption in a place like the DRC.
It makes you wonder, how does that kind of experience working in that world, how does that translate to leading a nation? Especially one with as complex a history as the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's got to be a challenge.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But that's what some people find so interesting about Fayulu. I mean, think about it. Managing these big, complex organizations, finances on a massive scale, even navigating international relations, that's all part of the job at a company like ExxonMobil.
And those are definitely skills you'd want in any leader. But in the DRC, a country that's dealt with so much exploitation and instability, those skills could be really, really valuable.
Exactly. Fayulu's supporters, they argue that this background, it gives him a different set of tools, a different way of approaching the challenges facing the country, almost like he's bringing a different playbook to the game.
And from what I'm seeing in this document, it seems like he's not afraid to use it. He seems to be pushing for some pretty significant changes.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most consistent themes you see with Fayulu, it's this real commitment to transparency and accountability. He wants a more open government, a more honest government.
Which makes sense, given his stance on the 2018 elections. He's been very vocal about believing those elections were rigged and that he was the rightful winner. And whether or not you agree with him on that, you got to admit, his focus on a transparent process, on getting to the bottom of any irregularities, it definitely resonates, especially with people who are looking for a more accountable government in the DRC.
It goes beyond just that one election, though. Fayulu's point is that you can't have a stable country, you can't build trust with the people unless the foundation is solid. And that foundation, for him, it's a fair and transparent election process.
So how does he propose to fix it? He keeps mentioning a way out of the political turmoil, but what does that actually look like?
Well, it's not some quick fix, that's for sure. Fayulu, he's talking about deep systemic changes, particularly when it comes to institutions like the Electoral Commission, which he believes, is compromised.
He's talking about more than just tweaking a few things, right? This sounds like a complete overhaul.
Yeah, exactly. It's about making it much harder for future elections to be manipulated to ensure those results actually reflect the will of the people.
And that's where this charte de Kisangani comes in, right? That's where he lays out his vision.
Right. And it's important to remember this isn't just Fayulu's own personal manifesto or something. This charter, it was actually co-signed by a bunch of other opposition leaders, too.
So it represents a broader desire for change, like a collective push for a more democratic and equitable Congo.
Yeah, you could say that.
So what are some of the key things they're advocating for in this charter?
Well, it's pretty wide-ranging, but for one, they want some serious reforms to that electoral commission, right? To make sure it's independent, neutral, the whole 9 yards. They're talking about things like setting up an independent body to oversee campaign financing.
Oh, wow. Okay, so really getting into the weeds of how these elections are run.
Exactly. And also making sure that the actual process of counting the votes is transparent, secure, can't be tampered with. They want to close those loopholes.
Makes sense given all the concerns about what happened in 2018. But it's not just about elections, is it? This charter, it seems to go beyond that.
You're absolutely right. This charter, it also puts a huge emphasis on basic human rights.
Right, like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, all that.
Exactly, and a truly independent judiciary. They see all of these things as essential for any functioning democracy.
Which, I mean, you're right, you can't really argue with that. Those are pretty foundational elements.
Exactly. And then there's the economic side of things, too.
Right, because you can't have a stable democracy if people are struggling to put food on the table.
That's the idea. So the charter, it pushes for development policies that actually benefit the Congolese people, not just a select few at the top, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah. Making sure that the country's natural resources, which are considerable, are actually being used to improve the lives of ordinary citizens.
Exactly. Addressing those root causes of instability, like poverty, lack of opportunity, because those are the things that can easily lead to unrest and, well, the history.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the whole issue of security, which is a major concern in the DRC.
Absolutely. And the charter, it addresses that too. They're calling for major reforms to the army, the police, the whole security apparatus.
To ensure the safety of all citizens, not just the elite. Wow, they're really trying to cover all the bases, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's ambitious, that's for sure. But is it realistic? I mean, the DRC has faced some pretty massive challenges throughout its history.
It's the big question, isn't it? I mean, colonialism, corruption, conflict. I mean, the DRC has been through a lot.
Yeah.
And these problems, they're deeply entrenched, that's for sure. But then again,
You do hear about that, though, right? The potential the DRC has. I mean, the resources are incredible. The culture is so vibrant, and the people, they've been through so much. Their resilience is amazing. So maybe there is a chance for things to really change.
that's what makes Fayulu so interesting, right? You have someone with his corporate background, and he's so committed to these democratic ideals, it makes you wonder, can he actually make a difference? Can he really unlock that potential? Could he be the one to help the DRC find a better way forward?
Yeah, it's like a real David and Goliath situation almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have this one man with his ideas, his vision, and he's up against these massive systemic issues that have been plaguing the country for decades.
It's easy to get caught up in the what-ifs. But I think Fayulu's story, it forces us to really think about some important questions. Questions about leadership, about the power of ideas, and about what role the international community can play, or maybe should play, in situations like this.
What do you mean? Like what kind of questions?
Well, for one, I think it begs the question, what kind of leadership does a country like the DRC really need? Especially now, in this day and age, could this be it? Could Fayulu's approach, this mix of corporate experience and democratic principles, could that actually be a more effective way forward?
Right. It makes you think about the power of ideas, too. Like, can these principles, if they're clearly articulated, passionately advocated for, can they actually create meaningful change in a place like the DRC? In a place that's faced, let's be honest, some really daunting challenges.
Absolutely. And then that leads to another question. What about the international community? What role should they be playing in all of this? Should they be doing more to support pro-democracy movements, hold leaders accountable, make sure those elections are truly free and fair?
It's easy to look at a situation like the DRC with all its complexities and feel overwhelmed, like it's just too big, too far gone. But Fayulu's story, his vision for his country, it's a good reminder that even in the face of huge challenges, even when things look really bleak, there's always hope. There's always the possibility of change.
And it reminds us that the fight for democracy, for a more just world, it's not a spectator sport. It's something that demands our attention, our engagement. And sometimes it even requires us to, take a hard look in the mirror and ask ourselves some tough questions about our own roles, our own responsibilities in making that change happen.
So if this deep dive into Martin Fayulu and the DRC has resonated with you at all, if you found yourself nodding along or maybe even getting fired up, don't let that feeling fade. Go out there, do your own research, get engaged, and be a part of the solution. That's all the time we have for today.
Je ne peux